everyone today to another edition of Taking Stock Live. Today we're really going to take stock with someone who has helped me personally take stock on my own journey, on how Microsoft is positioned with retailers and consumer goods, and frankly helped get through the pandemic. So I'm really excited for today. Karyn Schoenbart, welcome. It's so wonderful to have you here.
Oh, Shelley, thanks for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
Well, you are an incredible female leader, someone who I am now privileged to call a friend. And behind all of that, of course, is you have been a CEO, a board member, CEO of NPD, which is sort of the insight engine for retailers globally. You're a mom, you're an all-around superstar, and of course we sit on the RELA board together. So it's just, it's incredible to finally get you here on Taking Stock Live.
Well, it's a great venue, and I'm, as I said, thrilled to be here. And I would like to say all the same things back at you.
And if we get into it, we might even tell the story, our clip, was it Power Bar story from Florida. We'll see where we go. So Karyn, obviously you are so accomplished and people look at you in terms of an icon of what you've accomplished, but let's go all the way back. What was I don't think your first proper job was in retail, but I'm not sure. But what was your first what you would call your first job?
Well, I answered an ad in the newspaper. After I graduated from college, there were no teaching jobs. I was an education major, and I answered an ad in the newspaper that said, work with computers, interesting work, no typing necessary. I think about that. This was when computers were like rooms. Anyway, make a long story short, that job didn't work out. I met the president of the company, and he took a liking to me and offered me a job as a project director in market research. I said, project director, that sounds interesting. When I sit down at my desk, what will I do? And he said, we'll teach you. And that was the beginning of my career in market research, writing questionnaires, analyzing data, and I've been there ever since.
Wow. So was there typing necessary?
No, there were no typing necessary.
Wow. So you really, NPD was your first job?
Well, it was another market research company called HTI. I was there for a while. I left, and then NPD bought HTI, and I came back. And I had a very long stint there, and always just fantastic. NPD is a fantastic company.
Yeah, unbelievable. And, starting really with that curiosity to your point about writing questionnaires. So now, I mean, as I mentioned, you sit on a lot of boards. And as I was even getting ready for this morning, reading the number of speaking engagements that you've done on LinkedIn, it's dazzling. Tell us a little bit about your journey and some of the lessons that you've learned along the way, the bigger ones.
Yeah, well, neither of my parents went to college, and I fell into this job in business. And I have to be honest, Shelley, I did not have a vision. I didn't have an aspiration to be anything. I basically worked hard and got promoted, and worked hard and got promoted. And that was kind of how I built my career. And I still think that, again, not to the extent where you don't do anything else in your life, but if you work hard, you volunteer for things, some of the biggest lessons learned is raise your hand, get involved. Be proactive, look for solutions, not just problems. Those are the things that make you stand out. So that would be one. The other big thing that I learned is the biggest transition for me was moving from an individual contributor. I was in sales, which I recommend anybody, if you can, do a stint in sales. But I moved from being a salesperson to a sales manager. And that was a very big challenge because as a salesperson, you're rewarded for what you individually can do. And all of a sudden, as a manager, and initially I was horrible at it, because it was kind of like, how quickly can I get rid of this person so I can get back to my real job? And so making the transition to a manager is a very big one, because now your success isn't based on your competencies, but your ability to get your team to be competent and work as a team and be successful. And it's not for everybody. Some people should just stay individual contributors. But if you want to be a manager, it's not something you're just born knowing. And it's something that you need to learn how to do. So that would be a couple of the biggest lessons.
Wow, those are two powerful ones. Raise your hand and volunteer. Really work hard and get promoted. and then the sort of transition from being accountable for your own work versus leading and inspiring a team. Were there, I mean, sometimes in these bright lights, it's easy to look at all the successes, but were there some mistakes you made or you see other people making as they go through those two opportunities?
Yeah, again, I think that first of all, becoming a manager is not something you just know how to do. So it's important to be educated in what it takes and make that conscious decision that I want to now be a manager or leader. So that was one. The other thing is that women in particular, I think, hold back. We've all heard, you wait until you have 100% or 110% of the criteria before you go for the next job, whereas men have a tendency to go for the next job more quickly. So I think women in particular have to push themselves, and we as leaders have to push the women still to be confident, to take that leap of faith, to take that job. What's the worst thing that will happen? It doesn't work out. You're not going to die. And you're probably doing the work of that next job. You might as well get paid for it. So I really think stretching and pushing and going for it is something that I didn't always do. And I was fortunate that I had people who helped push me along to do that. So I think those would be a couple of the key lessons that I learned the hard way. And the other is when you do get promoted, delegate. Nobody likes a micromanager as a boss. And you really need to learn how to delegate because now you're being paid to do a new job.
Yeah.
And if you're not delegating, you're not doing what you're being paid to do. You're not learning those skills of how to be a manager, and you're not helping the people under you. And they might not do it exactly the way you do it, but you have to let them, give them the rope to be able to learn and do things on their own. And that's a skill that a lot of new managers really have to work at.
I agree. And for my team who's going to be watching this, they'll chuckle because I think, and I sometimes I imagine I observe this in you because you have such high standards. The delegation is one of the hardest things because you have a vision in your head of how things will be or go, but yet you have and you have to give things to other people to do. And then actually, if you can let go enough, eventually what you find is that they do it better than you could have ever imagined. But it's an internal process of talking to yourself, I find sometimes.
Yeah. And then as you're managing more senior people in particular, you have to let them make their own mistakes. The greatest example I can give is hiring somebody. You, Shelley, might want to hire, Bob, and I don't think Bob's right for the job, but I have to make it clear it's your decision. This isn't a bet the company decision. And I might say to you, I'm not sure Bob is the right person for the job, but if I don't let you hire Bob, I've totally usurped you. And if you hire Bob and he doesn't work out, you've learned and you won't do it again. And if he does work out, I was wrong, which could happen.
Yeah, hard to imagine, and to that point, also acknowledging when you were wrong, I think is a big piece about being a great leader. So one of the things that you did that was, I know, very meaningful for me and for a number of women, in fact, it came up at a dinner last week, him for her dinner, was starting Conversation and Cocktails, which was just this incredible group of women during the pandemic. I think that's how I got pulled in to come together and just have conversations. And probably one of the most sort of high fidelity in my own mind conversations was around the imposter syndrome. And I think a lot of us, particularly women from what we read, suffer from the imposter syndrome. So, what advice would you give to people out there who are suffering from the imposter syndrome?
And I suffered from it my entire career. Because I didn't have a classic business background, I was always worried somebody would tap me on the shoulder and go, "We caught you. You don't belong." And when I heard that there was this thing called the imposter syndrome, just knowing that it exists and that other people feel that way was like a giant weight off my shoulders, because I would meet very accomplished women who said that they felt that as well. So that was good. I would say three things. The first is start a fan file. Put your accomplishments in a file. When you get a compliment from your boss or your client, or you work on a special project that you're proud of, put it in your fan file. What that does is when you're feeling down or when you're ready to look for a promotion or a new job, you can go to your fan file and use that to build yourself up. The second thing is don't compare yourself to others. Now, that's really hard to do, but I think it's important to figure out what is your unique thing, what makes you special, and really try to build on that. And I like to also say, if I ask people to name their weaknesses, they could probably rattle them off. But I think it's equally as important, maybe even more important, to also focus on your strengths and to build out your strengths to become a superpower. Because that is what will, A, make you happier if you're working on something you're good at. And if you can build that from being good to being great, then that will set you apart from others. So building just on your strengths. And I have a quick example about tennis. I'm a tennis player. Well, my backhand is my weakness. My forehand's my strength, like many tennis players. One summer, all I did was took lessons on my forehand, on my strength. I worked on a down the line shot. I worked on a drop shot. I worked on an angle shot. And I have to tell you, I won way more matches. Now, I have to be able to hit the ball with my backhand, but I worked on my strength. And so that would be a big piece of advice for overcoming the imposter syndrome.
Wow. Okay. So fan file and then don't compare, like focus on your strengths and then really amplify them, which I think is actually sort of the crux of Strength Finders. That whole management theory is, to back to your point about management, is, really find your team's strengths, and then how do you help them amplify those?
Right. Yeah. And find people who believe in you, whether they be family members, whether they be coworkers, whether they be a boss, a mentor, a sponsor. Find people who believe in you and let them kind of push you out of that comfort zone.
Which seems like, I had the privilege, Karyn, you invited me to dinner with Todd in Washington, D.C. last time we were physically together, and talk about a fan file. He doesn't, he really, you can tell you two have become so complementary. In fact, you play this game I've been trying to do where you can figure out what the other person's going to order on the menu. But I would imagine his fan file on you is quite large.
Well, Todd Johnson, who was the founder and chairman of NPD, is just a great human being, and he believed in me and others, not just me. Sometimes before I believed in myself, and he pushed me to take jobs that I had the imposter syndrome about, and and he pushed me to think about it and to go ahead and go for it, and I'm very grateful that I did.
Well, it's incredible what you two have built together, really. And so one of the other on the long list of things that you've done is you've written a book. And you wrote a book called Mom.B.A, which I would love for you to tell the audience, like, what inspired you to do it and sort of what are some of the key themes that you talk about there?
So, yes, I love talking about this. So my daughter, Danielle, when she first started working in advertising, she realized that she knew things that her peers didn't know. And here's this 21-year-old kid giving advice, doling out advice to people on dealing with their boss and dealing with their clients. And we realized that she knew these things because she had me her whole life as a live-in mentor. Now, true story, Shelley, when Danielle was 6 years old, I'm not kidding, 6 years old, and she wanted to have a sleepover, I made her and her friend give a presentation on why they should have a sleepover. And after the other mom and I said, yes, you can have a sleepover, and they kept talking, I said, shh, don't sell after the close. So here's this 6-year-old who knows don't sell after the close. And we would drive in the car and we would play the interview game. And I would practice my interviewing and I would say, so Danielle, tell me, for what things have you been criticized? So she just grew up knowing all this. And she said she felt like she got a Mom.B.A. And she said, you really should write a book for people who didn't have a parent like you growing up, who didn't have a parent in business like you growing up. And in talking to other young people whose parents were doctors or dentists or a stay-at-home mom or whatever it was. So I wrote Mom.B.A, and there's 10 chapters, and it's dealing with your boss and dealing with difficult situations and leadership and international travel and the balancing act, because I also have a son, Eric, and managing all of that and juggling all of that. So there's a big chapter on that as well. And it was kind of a labor of love. It really was.
So did Danielle come up with the title Mom.B.A?
Yeah, well, she said you should write. Well, she said, I feel like I got a Mom.B.A. And so that was the genesis of it. And I'll tell you, Shelley, she's a rock star now. She's the chief product officer at OMD and, just rocking her own career. And I couldn't be more proud.
That's incredible. I mean, just the fact at 6 years old to be taught don't sell before it's closed. It's interesting. My kids have not come up with a book, but I similarly see my boys. I think because I do a lot of public speaking like you, people always say, like at weddings or at school events, they are so comfortable getting up and knowing how to, sort of someone once said to me, the audience is there for you. And so like, they just know how to connect because I think it's been around them so much. So it's fun when you see your kids absorb some of this stuff because in the background, we're making all these other sort of internal trade-offs.
Exactly.
So one of the things that you did on Conversation and Cocktails, which I love, was have a bunch of us share some of like our summer reading. And I know when I saw your reading list, Karyn, talk about imposter syndrome. I mean, I don't know, either you don't sleep or I don't know, there's something, but you're a prolific reader of like all sorts of things. So number one, how do you find the time to do all that reading? And what are some of the books that you're reading or really interested in right now?
So I find the time because I figured out how I can read while working out on a treadmill or an elliptical.
Oh.
So I kill two birds with one stone doing that. And I read a little bit before I go to bed every night. And I also switch off between audibles and books. So whenever I'm traveling, driving in the car or something, after I listen to the news, I read. And it's, so and also my kids are grown now, so I don't have that pressure that I used to have. But I've always loved to read. In terms of fiction, I like to read current fiction because there's so many options that I just, it's overwhelming. So at least if I read something current. So there's, I could recommend so many. I just finished a really great book called The Violin Conspiracy, which was written by a first-time author. And I won't give away too much about the story, but a lot of it is somewhat autobiographical. Biographical. And it was excellent. For a first-time author, it was excellent, very thought-provoking, called The Violin Conspiracy. In terms of nonfiction, I would recommend two books that kind of changed my life. One was called Younger Next Year. It's kind of designed for people who are sort of middle-aged. So if you're really young, it might not appeal to you, but I think I got it for my 50th birthday or something. And it changed my life. The gist of the book is work out every day and don't eat crap. But it's really inspiring. And then the other one, speaking of sleep, is Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. Highly recommend it. And I like books that have research in them and science in them. Both of these have an element of inspiration and an element of science. But it takes all the benefits of sleep, everything from health and how you look and how you feel and all of this, and then goes into the science as to why it's all true. Wow. And after you read it, it really inspires you to make sure to get enough sleep.
And do you, or how many hours of sleep do you get most nights?
I try for 7.5. Okay. It's not always easy, but, and then there's like the exercise every day and get enough sleep. That's the conflict.
Wow. Well, but that's a good range of recommendations. Thank you for those tips. And I think also just doing it like when you're on the treadmill or, as part of another activity, also that makes me understand better how to actually pack it in. Exactly.
And I don't watch TV so much anymore. I used to sort of binge watch TV and now I'm sort of binge reading.
I need to do that and get off social media. Honestly, like you can doom scroll for a long time.
What a time suck! All of a sudden you'll be in it, and an hour goes by, and you're like, oh my god, I had all these other things I needed to do.
Totally, nothing has advanced. Okay, so we're in season 3 of Taking Stock Live. So we've added this sort of fun 5. I'm going to ask you 5 questions, and I'm just curious. So first off, what is the weirdest thing you have ever eaten?
Well, I was in Australia once. That was a great trip. And I had crocodile, tastes like chicken, and kangaroo, tastes kind of gamey.
Crocodile tastes like chicken. I love it. Kangaroo. Okay. How about favorite superhero?
Oh, Buffy.
Oh,
Buffy, 100% Buffy.
Okay, like no hesitation.
Buffy. She like feminist, powerful. I kind of likes the whole vampire thing. Yeah.
Okay. Best invention ever.
Okay. Well, it's a tie between a microwave, because I don't cook at all, zero, and something's got to give. I always say to my family, we can't all be good at everything.
I think you can get away with that, but tie between the microwave and what
Okay,
else?
and anything, my iPhone, my iPad, my iWatch, my Apple Watch. Can't let I don't know if I could pick between them. Maybe my iPad, actually, because it's sort of, I read on it, I do email on it, I watch TV on it, et cetera, et cetera.
Huh. Okay. All right. Props for Steve Jobs and Apple.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. So if you could be a fly on the wall, who would you want to listen in on and why?
This one's so hard. I hate when people ask that dead and alive question because it's such a hard one. I guess right now it would have to be Putin, because I'd really want to know, is he crazy, or is he, does he mean it, or is he bluffing? Like, I'd really kind of want to know.
Yeah, I get it. Like that would be, I would like to see you actually not just be a fly on the wall in that conversation, Karyn, but the interviewer. I think the world would be in a different place if we had you there.
Hey, you're doing a pretty good job there, girlfriend. You should do it.
So this is a fun one for you, especially. Like, what would be your dream job and why? This is your last question.
Well, listen, I loved being at NPD for really decades, and being the CEO of NPD was a fantastic job. But I also chose to lead, it was time. It was time to pass the baton. So excited about the combination of IRI and NPD and Kirk Perry, who's the new CEO. I think it's all going to be wonderful. So I'd have to say right now, my ideal job is what I'm doing. I'm getting to do things like this and hang out with people like you. And I'm also on a whole bunch of boards of really interesting early stage data companies, and like Civic Science, that I know more, Microsoft does a lot of work with, and I'm having a ball. And I didn't want to retire. I wasn't going to retire, but I just needed to, I wanted to do some different, interesting things. And right now, that's what I get to do. So I'm having a ball.
Well, I am so thrilled to see you in this space. You're right. We actually had John Dick from Civic Science on. We're doing a podcast with him as well. And Karyn, one of the things that you have always, as I've observed you done, is make the complicated field of data science and data accessible to brands and leaders around the globe. And I think there couldn't be, with all the questions that we have in the world today, there couldn't be a more important sort of call of duty, if you will, to have people who are very grounded in business, know how to translate complicated ideas into something that makes sense, and then lastly, action. So we've been proud to be partners of NPD, now NPD IRI. And I love that you're helping really sponsor a lot of these sort of younger companies as they're making their way into this world.
Yeah, it's a great thing. And you hit the nail on the head, Shelley, because a lot of them have the technology, but not necessarily know how to bring it to market. Some of them are really good at marketing, and they need some work on the product development side. And it all is, in these times right now where nothing is predictable anymore, data is more important than ever, and hard facts and data. And I know you're a real believer in that as well.
I am. I always say facts are our friends, and then facts are our friends that come from people who you trust. There couldn't be anything more important. Well, huge thank you to you. As I said at the top of this, long awaited having the opportunity to bring you and share you with this audience. It was incredible. I still am in awe of Danielle, who helped, to share sort of the lessons that she got with everyone globally. I hope people will order the book after watching you. But a huge thank you for coming and joining me and the audience today.
My pleasure, Shelley. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. And for all of you who came in for another episode of Taking Stock Live, thank you so much for joining us today. I know you'll love this episode. I know you'll also give me and my team your comments, your feedback, and what you want more of. So please keep that. We love it, and that's how we get better ourselves. So thank you.